May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be always pleasing to you, the God of endless searches. Amen.
Amen.
It's a real pleasant day outside or everything. But you know what? We all kind of come here every Sunday, or most Sundays we can, because we just have this desire to seek God. It's a good thing. And this has been, this has been a human trait since recorded history. And it may be one that searching for God is just embedded, or just encoded right upon our human DNA. Even those that don't acknowledge or act upon this phenomenon deal with different times of their lives. Though they may outwardly deny the desire to search for a higher being, the idea still runs through the minds of humans quite often. The scriptures from the day gives us evidence that God also has this nature, one of seeking relationships with creation, and in fact relishes when even one of the beloved is willing to partner with God after an exile from him. The lesson from Exodus has God, the people seeker, joined with Moses, the God seeker, working in tandem. And their combined effort saved our ancestors and thus ourselves from extermination. The conversation that they were having today in the lesson that's kind of sandwiched between the actions of the people while Moses had gone up the mountain to receive the tablets with the 10 Commandments, and later their severe punishment for those actions. Several months prior to Moses leaving for this intimate summit with God, the Israelis had been instructed by Moses through God's presence on how to live as a chosen people. Many instructions and protocols were given about both worship and living in community with one another. The people agreed to this covenant. Moses alone ascended Mount Sinai to receive further instructions and have God ready the tablets of the commandments, which later got placed in the Ark of the Covenant. Well, while this was going on, things went south. The people, they felt insecure with the absence of Moses. And Moses' physical and God's spiritual presence, they were alone. Moses was gone too long for the liking, and the people implored Moses' brother Aaron to do something about it. Well, being a lieutenant of Moses, one would think that Aaron would display more appropriate leadership for God, but he failed. The people had a religious need, and Aaron felt justified in providing a representation of God to fill that need. He later told Moses that the calf idol just jumped out of the fiery mix. So I guess no matter what excuse you've ever given God, it can't be any worse than that. Well, you see how happy they were at this golden calf. Aaron continues his blasphemy by building an altar for it and calling for a festival. This was the kind of festival that might rank right up there with those Girls Gone Wild escapades of our times. It was that bad. Such decline in behavior was not expected, and it wasn't even known to Moses what was going on. But God was monitoring it. In fact, when God tells Moses to go down off the mountain and deal with his corrupt brethren, Moses is right there to defend them against God's judgment. Moses acts like the prophet and the mediator God intends. Moses stands in the breach created in this rupture between man and God, and he persuades God that it is in God's best interest not to bring his full wrath against his people. Moses' actions saved the sinners, while he didn't even know the extent of their sin. Well, when Moses does come from the mountain and finds out the truth, there is hell to pay. The smashing of the tablets of officially breaks the covenant that had been established. Moses burns and pulverizes the golden calf that makes the people drink the mixture, which was the first warning of the dangers of heavy metals in drinking water. But yes, you know, that long. And Moses purges 3,000 of the Israelis by having the Levites use their swords to march through the camp, killing their own brothers, friends, and neighbors. He tells the Levites they were ordained to God and blessed for their actions on that day. And it was back to the drawing board regarding the covenant with God, but at least there was still a nation to seek after him and a God for those people to seek. The lesson today, the gospel lesson today from Luke, shows once again that God continues to seek us. God tells a couple of stories that hits the chord of a recurring pattern of human life, that of losing and finding. We do it all the time. We lose the hardest things, we lose the simplest things, and we search all over, and when we find them, we're so happy about it. It's like agony and ecstasy, just over and over. It's a pattern of human life, and Jesus picked up on it. Jesus' audience includes the haves and the have-nots. The setting is a meal, attended by the outcasts of the time. The Pharisees and scribes, they stand nearby, grumbling and complaining about the company that Jesus is keeping. The purpose of the stories is one of inclusion. Inclusion. That even the outcasts of society are sought by God, for he is the God of reconciliation. And Jesus calls on his critics to do the same, although they probably went over the Pharisees' head. They didn't know. Well, this is God's end of the bargain. God will always be willing to seek us. God is relentless. God is stubborn. He's insistent. He's tireless. He will seek us out regardless of our current condition, our current status. Then, God will party like it's 1999 to celebrate our return. Well, this joy wakes up to heaven. I mean, it's such a celebration, man. It goes up to heaven. And it's pleasing to God. Now, I'm glad to hear in that parable, in that lesson today, that Jesus implies that only 1% of the population is in need of remedial actions. But if that was true, the world really wouldn't be like it is today. We know that 99 out of 100 people are not that good all the times. Jesus knows that when one points out a sinner, he's pointing 3 fingers right back at himself. Yep. So we, who are the 99 today, well, we often aren't to be found either. Like the coin in the purse, or the can't cry out. Yep. The hard truth is many of us like to lie low on occasion. We don't want to be found by anybody or any organization that wants a big commitment from us. We want to be small and hide from God. We may like the title of Christian, but we'd rather seek God on our own terms and our times. We feel that we haven't wandered that far off from God, and just like a lost sheep, we can come bounding back on a moment's notice. Plus, there are other reasons why people don't seek out God besides just what I just talked about. And they don't even pick up on God trying to contact them. Being found can be frightening and intimidating. It said Moses felt this way at first when he was called to be a prophet. He couldn't do it. Too frightening, too intimidating. It's scary. Being found can be enlightening. People struggle to move on from those old ideas you had, those ill-perceived ideas and concepts that, gosh, I'm going to have to to change my ways. Last week we heard the lesson and preaching of considering the cost of commitment of working with God, because enlightenment has a cost. Some have been lost to society for so long that they don't understand. Often the situation that those people may be in has been imposed upon them, just as surely as the religious rules of the Pharisees would impose, who was a sinner back in the days of Jesus. Many who live on the fringe of society, they simply play out the role that they've been assigned. They might be surprised that anybody would be seeking them out as a beloved child of God in the first place. Still, regardless of the level of effort of people seeking out God, God's character makes it impossible not to seek out all people. Jesus had a dinner table that could always fit one more. The one that is found by God and wants to be reconnected with God will always have a spot at that table. The Reverend Charles Hofhacker reminds us how lucky we are to have such a God. A God who, like a shepherd with no common sense, leaves the rest to flock and searches the immediate world in order to find us. Those 99 sheep aren't going to make it if they're left at home. They're going to come back to disaster. Or a God like a housewife gone crazy. She tears the place apart, searches every dark corner in order to find us. And yet this is what happens in our own lives again and again and again when we're lost. The best we can do is, if we even have the slightest desire to be found, is to make repentance and return a regular basis. It is innate for God to seek, it's innate for God and us to seek each other for the reconciliation that we need. As Jesus says today, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. It is a good thing to bring God such joy.